Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, authors, and more. Today, we are joined by the author of Nothing Gets Sold Until the Story Gets Told, Steve Multer. Steve, welcome to the show.
Matthew, thank you so much. Pleasure to be with you, with all of your listeners. I'm really looking forward to this.
As am I. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLink's intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 Security Operations Center, we monitor your computers, networks, and cloud accounts using a combination of AI and highly skilled cybersecurity technicians to detect any signs of attack or intrusion. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Steve, thanks again for coming on. This is this one I've been looking forward to for a while. So thanks. And your book, which is out of focus, I don't know why. It's so crazy.
That's all right.
Yeah. Right. There we go. Nothing gets sold until the story gets told. Fantastic, actually. So actionable, so good. Before I kind of drool all over your book here, let me ask you, so why this book and why now?
So it's a great place to start, Matthew. The book was very much a passion project for me. I spent a lot of years in this industry, in the corporate storytelling industry, speaking on behalf of major brands, Fortune corporations all over the country and around the world. And after putting in enough time, people said, oh, you know what? You've had all these phenomenal experiences. You've met a large number of C-suites from across a lot of large corporations. You should write a book. And I started to think, okay, well, that's a book that 9 people would be interested in reading. There's probably not a huge demand for what that is. And I started to think, well, what could I do that could be in service of other people who consider themselves to be either corporate storytellers or professional spokespeople, or maybe just the people within an organization who are asked to speak on behalf of their brand? How could I create something that would help to make them better communicators for their brand, more valuable to their brand leadership, and more confident within their own careers of telling a story that has deep meaning and that creates success, not just for the organization, but for their own teams and for themselves. And that was really the impetus for this particular book. And as you and I talked about a moment ago, the book wasn't ready until I knew that it wasn't just ideas, concepts for people to put into action, but also the methodologies to actually do it. It couldn't just be about, here's what you should do. It had to also include, and here is how you actually go and get that done. And it had to be accessible to as many people as possible. And I think we ended up in a good place, and your kind words are an acknowledgement of that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think a lot of times a book, you get excited by the idea of it and you start reading it, and it just comes out as you're left not just wanting more, but not getting what you were expecting out of it. And for me, and I think a lot of business owners, a lot of business people, we hear a lot about storytelling, and you're like, you got to be a good storyteller. And everybody, you start thinking as a business owner about, marketing. How are we going to market our wares, right? Our services. And you see these great examples like Apple's 1984, which I know you mentioned here. And I think it's such a great example for so many reasons. And you're like, well, how do I do that? And then it goes back to, well, nobody wants to hear about the boring old, whatever it is we do. And then you end up getting, at least from my perspective, I end up, just hitting people with facts and figures and, isn't this important? And it falls on deaf ears, right? And then I'm left thinking, well, I need to be a better storyteller. And what I loved about your book is you didn't just get that you got to be a great storyteller. You got actionable ways of doing it. You break it down into the whys, the hows, the little bits, and without actually taking somebody by the hand and doing the whole talk for them or telling them the whole story, you really teach them how to, and you give them great examples of how to tell a story, whether you're on stage or whether we want to apply this to marketing, which was exactly what I was looking for from the book. So, I'm not trying to get up here and have a whole, it all about me. This is about your book. But I was just want to let you know, I think it was fantastic. And I think, that you really do a great job of bringing that storytelling in. So let me throw this back to you. A question. You know, yeah, it was just so good. So I'm going to stop there, and I'll have questions, but let me give you a chance to talk.
All about you. The book is not about me at all. This is an important part of storytelling in general. So my mantra, and the mantra that I try to teach people and train people into, is it's a very simple concept, which is don't tell them what you want to tell them. Tell them what they want to hear. It is such a success driver. You saw that in the book, but when you say it's not about you, yeah, it absolutely is about you. Anything within the book, anything within corporate storytelling guidance is all about the audience. It's not about the speaker, not about the creator, and it's definitely not about the brand. And this is a mistake a lot of organizations make, is that they make the story all about themselves. Here is my product, my service, my solution, my capability. I'm the best. We create the best, therefore you should buy it. And it's why most marketing tends to fail. When we turn the focus back on the subject, back on the client, back on the consumer, back on the reader, in this particular instance, that's when we create real value and real success, because all we're really saying is, I want to tell your story, not my story. And it's a great, great methodology of immediately up-leveling the way your brand reaches the marketplace.
So let's give somebody an example of that, because that's a great idea, and it sounds really wonderful. And then from a listener who hasn't read the book, they're like, yeah, of course. Right. But how do I do that? Because we do make the best widget, east of the Mississippi. So what's the story? Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. Buy our widgets. End of story.
Absolutely. Well, okay. So here's a story that I love to tell. I'm in the market for a car. And I'm a BMW guy. Why? Well, my dad was a BMW guy and his dad was a BMW guy. And I've always loved BMWs. I've always thought they were great. I've owned a couple of them, but I'm in the market for a new car and I want to see what's out there. So I'm going to go and look at the Audi. I'm going to look at the equivalent Mercedes, maybe the equivalent Lexus, maybe the equivalent Acura, or whatever car I believe is all on roughly the same level of what I want to buy. And here's the problem. I'm going to go to every one of those dealerships and I'm going to test drive the car. And the first thing I'm going to get hit with is why this car is the best in its class. And Audi has its arguments for why its torque is the best, and its stability and safety is the best, and its power off the line is the best, and the way its engine is formatted is the best. Then I'm going to go to Mercedes and they're going to tell me why they're the best. And then Acura is going to tell me why they're the best. And as a consumer, if everybody is the best, I get confused. I don't understand. First of all, I'm not enough of an automobile expert to make the determination of whose metrics are the accurate metrics and who is manipulating their metrics. And in the end, I'm going to say, I'm confused. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy another BMW. They've been good to me before. I've been used to them. And now I make an emotional decision on that purchase as opposed to an informed executive decision on that purchase. We humans, we will always go with emotion first. We'll always go with our gut before we go with information. And the trouble with so much branding and so much organizational market messaging is that it goes straight to metrics, to numbers, data, analytics, and statistics. And what it does, unfortunately, is it undermines the nature of good, solid human-to-human communication. And the better the communication is between people, the more likely what we are communicating will reach them, will land, will have an impact, and they'll internalize it and act on it. So I'll add one more thing to it so that I don't speak for too long here, and that is what I like to call the flow of content hierarchy. And a lot of brands market to their audiences, market to the buyer, the consumer, or even media in the incorrect way. They flip this metric upside down. And the idea is we always want to speak to the human being first. One person communicating with another person. And the reason is until somebody understands why they should pay attention to us, they won't. They just won't do it. They don't see the value in it for themselves. Or what they hear is the pitch. It always starts with the pitch, and nobody likes to be pitched. We want to hear a good story. So we have to communicate human to human first in a way that I talk to Matthew, and Matthew looks at me and says, I like this guy. he seems cool. He seems like he knows what he's talking about. He doesn't seem like he's overselling himself. He just seems like he's interested in me. And we create a correlation, a connection between the two of us. Once I can establish that with my audience, now I'm ready to move to the next level of the hierarchy, which is to speak to them as a consumer, meaning, what do I think you want and need? How can I provide it for you? And how can I get you to buy into what I'm saying? And that can be with money, or it can be with your time. Your time is extremely valuable. If you're going to invest time in me, boy, I better make it worth your while, or all I've done is waste your time. If I can then get past that level of the hierarchy, now I can speak to you as an employee or as an organization where I say, now that we understand each other, and now that I've created value for you and gotten you engaged and interested based on your needs, not mine, here is what I have to offer. Would this be of interest to you? Human first, consumer second, employee third. And what do most people do when it comes to advertising, marketing, business? They flip it upside down. They immediately say, here's what I want you to buy, and here's why I want you to buy it. And they bypass the human being. They're hoping the human being comes along for the ride. We humans don't work that way. Talk to us as a person first and as a wallet later. And if we can do that, we create immediate success for our brand.
I love it. Now let's apply that back to your car buying experience.
Sure.
So let's say the Audi dealer, right? You're a BMW guy, but you've gone to the Audi dealer. Now you're the Audi dealer, salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to do this, right? How are you going to get the BMW owner how are you going to connect with them? Tell this, what do you do?
Perfect. I love that question, Matthew. That's exactly the way to take it. All right. So I'm the Audi dealer. My job as a good sales representative is to get to know, first of all, why is this person a BMW guy? What is it that this person's father or grandfather loved about their BMW, and what do you love? Why have you purchased them in the past? What do you look for in a vehicle? What is it that you want, and what makes you feel good about that particular purchase and ownership? Then I'm going to start to look for a way to say, okay, I agree with you. I totally understand. BMW is a phenomenal, phenomenal vehicle. But let's talk about maybe some pieces of that puzzle that haven't been connecting for you, or maybe things that you've been looking for and hoping for, meaning why did you come and look at the Audi? Why didn't you just go and buy another BMW? Clearly, there's an aspect of you that thought, I don't know what I don't know. So let's go figure out what's out there and what might be available. This is what all people within all organizations are doing constantly, because their leadership is saying, go save us money, go cut a significant amount out of our quarterly budget. Go and find a cheaper, better, faster, stronger way to do this. Even if you're comfortable with what you've been doing up until this point, you have an impetus to go out and see what else is available. And the wise business person on the other side of that conversation, on the other side of that equation, wants to find out, why are you out here searching around? And what is it that I can provide for you? How can I fill in the value gap? How can I make it easier for you to make a change in your decision? What are you looking for, and how can I be the one that supplies it for you? The way to do that is not, the Audi is just a better car, you want to buy it. You're going to lose your customer instantly if you do that. But if you get to know them as a person first, find out what their motivations are, their likes, their dislikes. Now, we can't always do this in a group format. If it's one-on-one, and we've got an opportunity to talk with one another, then I can do that. If I'm standing on a stage in front of a room full of 50 or 100 or 1,000 people, I can't get to know each one of them individually. So now it's up to me as a good corporate communicator, corporate storyteller, to figure out, how can I let these people know that I am in this for them, for their benefit. I'm here to create value in their lives, professional and personal. And if I can make that happen from the stage, or from the screen, or in a one-on-one conversation, that is how I get that in on a human-to-human level, which then allows us to discuss business on a more intelligent and receptive level. I hope that all makes sense.
100%. In fact, what I love about that is, so we recently started, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so ago, started using this sales training by this guy called named Matt Easton, and Easton University is his sales. And he basically, his entire approach is exactly what you're saying. He does it, obviously focused on the one-on-one sales, but it's exactly that. And he says things like, slow down at the beginning to speed up. And he's got a whole process of basically doing exactly what you just said over the last few minutes. And, in that one-on-one exchange, find out why they're there, what's interesting to them, why why are they looking at Audi when they're normally a BMW, and dig into them as a person and find out what's motivating them, and what they're trying to accomplish, you name it. But it was so funny because you say that, and then so I'll tell you, I think from a lot of business people's perspective, that one-on-one interaction is much more they're much more comfortable with. It's much more intuitive. I've been, going door to door for years. I know it, or I've been selling, closing contracts for years. I get that. That's how you do it. Yeah, that's kind of 101 stuff, right? Kind of. But yet, for so many people, they get 101 wrong, and just running straight to the bottom line of we're better. So I love that you did that. And I think the real challenge for so many is, how do I do that from the stage? How do I connect with an audience? You hear it, connect with the audience, know your audience, connect with your audience. Okay, I can connect with one person well, right? I got it. Like, that's great. How do I connect with 100 well? So how does one go about that?
Again, great question. So what I always say is play to humanity, right? And I know I sound like a broken record here. Human to human, personal, personal. It makes so much sense. So most people will hit the stage or hit the conversation running. They have a limited period of time and they want to immediately get to content because their view is, well, I have so much to share that I can't really take any time for the audience, and when I say audience, it could be one person, it could be 1,000 people, for the audience to get to know me and understand me first. I don't have the time. I got to go straight to the numbers, straight to the data. And unfortunately, it's proven to be an unsuccessful path because, as I said before, until people know why they should pay attention to you, they won't pay attention to you. They have to see the value in it for themselves first. And the best way to establish that value is with that level of recognizability. So if I am the person who is going to get investment funding for my brand startup, or I want to scale my organization up to the next level, and I've got a meeting with a potential partner who is going to give me the ability to scale properly and be able to serve the market better, more intelligently, whatever your motivation happens to be, if the beginning of the conversation is about showing who you are at your core, about demonstrating the reason you are there in the room and in the space with that person, and if you can then make it about them instead of about yourself, you create someone who is not only recognizable, but somebody who is accessible, who is likable, who is approachable. What an audience needs, whether, again, it's an audience of one or an audience of 10,000 people, what an audience needs is to look at the person who is communicating to them and say, I know who that person is. I get them. They make sense to me. I feel a correlation. They understand me. They understand my reality. They understand my world. I'm more interested in what they have to say. And until that point, they're not ready to onboard that information. And what's interesting is a little short sidebar story. Is it goes back to this whole concept of corporate storytelling. So that concept started actually about 125, 130 years ago in 1895. It started with Deere and Company. So for anybody who knows John Deere, tractor company, by that point, by the late 1800s, John Deere had long since passed away. And the people who were running the company, they looked around and they said, all right, we manufacture farming equipment and tractors, and we live life on the land. And we understand our customers. We know who they are. We're very lucky to have them. We're number one in our marketplace, but we're seeing sales start to lag and people are getting a bit bored with our messaging. So what do we do? And they came up with a concept to start a publication, really a newsletter. It was a magazine called The Furrow. And this was in 1895. And The Furrow was the first to use what was known at the time as content marketing. That has since become corporate storytelling or storytelling marketing over the years. But the idea was, we can't just keep pitching tractors and connectors and rakes and things like this that we've been selling for all these years because they all know it. They've heard it. They're bored by it. So instead, they decided to use this publication to tell stories about what it was like to live and work in American farming. What was the daily existence like? What happened when you woke up in the morning? What were the challenges that we faced? What were weather concerns or psychological concerns for a farmer, family concerns, sales concerns within the marketplace? And by telling these stories of life on the land, what they found was their readers said, man, these people understand me. They get my world. They know what I'm about. They know what I think of when I wake up in the morning and what I'm worried about when I go to bed at night. And I love that. They understand me. And guess what happens? Sales follow. It becomes a more trusted brand, or it renews trust in the brand that people might have lost when they were just being pitched a whole bunch of farming products. Flash forward 130 years or whatever it is, and we find ourselves here today with corporate storytelling. The concept is exactly the same. When you communicate with somebody else in a way that they say, boy, that person gets me, all of a sudden, whatever follows, they are receptive to, more likely to internalize, and more likely to take action on. And that's a lot of verbose methodology that I just threw at you, but
I don't think so at all. In fact, I think it's fantastic. I love how you pulled that together. And I think I think the thing that it leaves people wondering as let's say a business owner, how do I get to that point? How do I, yeah, and you hear it a lot. You hear this, you got to know your clients, you got to know their stories. You got to, okay, how do we do that? I mean, you've got, how do you go about that? Yeah, you know your clients, but how do you really get to that level where you you're telling their stories and people are like, ah, they get me? How do you get what do you have? You have some recommendations? Is it like, yeah, just take it, talk to your clients, get to know their stories, or ask them. I mean, what's the idea? How do you, as a business owner, is working day in, day out, you're pumping out your widgets or whatever, what should you do? Go talk to some of your clients and be like, hey, take them to lunch, ask them their stories. How have our products and services, helped you? What do you recommend?
oh, I'm so glad you asked that. And it's interesting, right? Because what you just said right there, if I were to tell somebody that, go take your client to lunch, ask them about themselves, I know exactly. Salespeople would look at me like I have ferns growing out of my nose. They would never buy this for a minute. They would say, this is a waste of my time. I've got a bottom line that I have to meet, and I've got quarterly profit margins that I've got to be able to hit, and I've got to report back to my leadership on bottom line sales. So the idea is not to force the issue of good communication. The idea is when you get in a room with somebody, and this is so much easier said than done. Some people are naturally better communicators than others. Some are more confident, some are less confident. But fundamentally, we can all do the same things. It has to come from a natural, honest, and organic place. If you are forcing interest in other people, you will never be able to overcome that particular personal obstacle until you genuinely care about the people that you speak with. All of the rest of this is just conceptual. It's not truly applicable. But there are ways to become genuinely more interested in others. There are tools, and there are a few ways that I'll mention. I'll toss a few of them out quickly here, and if people want more detail, it's easy to track those down. But first of all, we talk frequently in business about the WIIFM factor, right? WIIFM, what's in it for me? Or if you're on the other side of it, it's the WIIF it, the what's in it for them factor. Anytime you have any sort of communication, by the way, this is both professional and personal. When there is something that you want to communicate, you always want to open up your thought process or your communication process by not thinking, what do I want to say? What do I want to get across? What do I want them to do that aligns with my thinking? It's always got to be, what can I say that improves their world, that creates value for them, that lifts them up, that makes them look better to their leadership, or within their relationship that makes them look better to their spouse? Or what can I do to serve others? And if we start every communication from that perspective, looking at the other instead of at ourselves, already we have set ourselves apart from 98% of communication that we hear on a daily basis. The second thing that we can do is what Uri Hasson of the Hasson Laboratory at Princeton, if you've ever seen his 2016 TED Talk, it's amazing. It's called This Is Your Brain on Communication, and it's just a terrific, terrific TED Talk. But Hasson talks about how we can get others to experience something that we ourselves have experienced if we build something around a shared narrative. So let's say you are into golf, and you know that I'm into golf. And instead of opening our communication on, I want you to buy my widget, we talk about golf for a couple of minutes first. Well, we've already established a mutual experiential balance between the two of us. Now, is that about the widget? Does it lead to sales in the end? No. It's about trust. It's about credibility. It's about likability and accessibility. And we can find ways to add that in. But now let's say that we're on stage in front of a large group of people, and I can't talk about golf to 1,000 people, maybe only 40 of them golf, and the rest of them don't. So how do we get more generic? And I always say there are three targets of highly successful communication. Three things that we want to make sure every piece of our communication conveys to the person we're talking to or the people we're talking to. Number one is we create differentiation. What am I going to share with you now that is not the same thing you've heard over and over and over and over and over and again? How can I allow you to walk away from our conversation saying, that's cool. I learned something. I ended up in a different place where I started. If I can create differentiation for you, I win. Because you win. I've helped you get to someplace new. And by helping you, I've helped myself. So that's the first target. Second target is clearing an obstacle out of their path. What can I say or do that says, I get a sense of what's getting in your way. You want to get to that next level, but there's something blocking you from doing it. And that block could be a massive boulder in your path. It could be an annoying pebble in your shoe that you just can't get rid of. And if I'm the person who can say, I think I can help you remove the pebble. I think I can make your life a little bit easier, a bit more comfortable. Would you allow me that opportunity? Again, I've made it about them, not I want to sell you something that will make your life better. It's I would like to be able to help you. Again, creates that trust and stability. So that's target number two. Target number three is motivate someone to take action in some way. How can I show you, demonstrate my passion to you in a way that inspires passion about the same topic or same idea? Because if I can get you excited, I might be able to get you to do something, to take action on our engagement. And any engagement that doesn't result in some sort of proactive stance, forward action, is an engagement that realistically might not have needed to happen in the first place. So if I can do one of those three things, differentiate, create differentiation, clear an obstacle from your path, or motivate you to take action, then what I've done is I have served you long before I try to sell you something.
Right.
Already the value is in your hands, and I'm not even asking you for $1. And whether you get that value from me or from somebody else down the road, whether you buy my product or somebody else's, that's totally beside the point. I'm here to help you. I'm here to create value for you, which makes you more accessible to my message.
I love that. So, in terms of you talk in your book about starting strong and finishing strong, like kind of the first impression is important and the last impression is equally important. And I think everybody's heard that a lot. And I think that obviously people get off to the wrong start when they're giving a talk, and you give some pretty good examples. Can you tell us, kind of tell everybody what your thoughts on that are, things that they could do to improve their opening, maybe icebreakers, you name it. How do you start your talk in a way that is strong and isn't just, hey, I'm Matthew, I do this, and this is my resume, and this is what I'm here to sell you, and buy my stuff, right? So how do you improve on that?
Love it. So it goes back to what we've been talking about. The moment I hit the stage or hit the camera, the first thing that I do has nothing to do with me. The first thing that I'm going to do is say, here is what I would like to accomplish for you in the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, hour that we have together. Here is the value that I'm about to drop into your lap. Here is what I would love to make happen for you and love to see you succeed with. And I'm going to give you every tool that you need to be able to walk away from our time together empowered and ready to go take action in that direction, the direction that you've been seeking. Sound good? Great. Let me show you how you get it done. Now, my name is Matthew. Yes.
Can I ask you something there?
Mm-hmm.
So, I love that. And then, because you hear that a lot when it's like, hey, putting together a webinar or a talk, right? And then I think there are questions as to, should you, because obviously you're probably there to sell them something. Do you tell them that I'm going to give you this and at the end, I'm going to give you do you even mention that at the beginning? Do you wait till the end? What are your thoughts on that whole, your selling your wares?
All right, I'll give you a great example. So this last week, I was in Amsterdam for Cisco Live EMEA. Cisco is one of my biggest clients. I've been working with Cisco for about 27 years here at this point as a face and voice for the brand. And we have a number of different business units across Cisco. Massive company, huge global organization, big Fortune brand, with a huge portfolio to sell. And what I always do is I never sell any single piece of the portfolio. What I'm selling to them is a way for them to improve their methodologies and their lifestyle, both personal and professional lifestyle. So let's say we're talking about security. You talked before about cyberlinks. You talked about making sure that we keep people out of your network. Well, this is a very big part of what Cisco does. So let's say we're on the security side. And Cisco has a number of different products within its security portfolio, whether we're talking about Thousand Eyes or we're talking about Umbrella or all of the different security products within Cisco. The goal is not to talk about the individual product that you can purchase. The goal is to say there are all of these things that you could be doing today to improve your status, to block any sort of impasse in behind the firewall or into the network, to be able to stop the hackers in their tracks or whoever it is that we happen to be talking about, how we can implement Gen AI or all of the different potentials and possibilities. But the goal is not to say, so you should go and buy this product. The goal is to say, we've got a lot of things available to you. What do you want? How can we customize this and fit this directly to you and your individual needs within your team? What do you need to say to your leadership in order for them to say to you, go, make it happen, and give you the budget and give you the freedom to go and make that occur? If we can do that, that sort of conversation is about the listener and not about us at Cisco. That is how we can immediately begin to improve our levels of communication. The minute we talk about our brand, our product, we lose people. They go away, they vanish, because everybody's telling them a story about how they are the best methodology of support for their security apparatus. Yep. Instead, make it about the person you're talking to. Let me tell you your story. Let me tell you what you want to get accomplished. We are here to help. Just let us know how, and we'll customize it for you. You name it.
I love that. That is absolutely fantastic, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard kind of both ends of the coin, or both sides of that coin, and I've never heard it that that is such a great, and it resonates with people so clearly. When you think about somebody's on stage and you know that let's say you're at a conference and you're hearing the umpteenth salesperson up there, and I know they're not a salesperson, they're talk, but you know that this is just, buy our wares, and maybe you'll get some nugget out of it, and you're trying to listen for that one piece that might be useful because you're not planning on buying it. And also it's kind of annoying that you just keep getting pelted with pitches. And so this is just brilliant, because it's those kind of speakers where you're like, oh, that was great. It was a relief. They were engaging, they were funny, they were, human, and they weren't just buy my stuff, but they actually cared about whatever, and they were telling a story, and they were giving you options without just kind of ramming it down your throat. So love that. Beautiful.
Excellent. Yeah, creating differentiation, and it's interesting, it's really not that hard to do. It's based in care. When you care about the people that you're speaking to, it comes across and it immediately sets you apart and above anybody else that they hear from. So when we think of why is so much communication either instantly forgettable or downright unappealing, and you just can't wait for it to be over. And it's usually because the information that you are hearing has been deadlifted from some other placement. So, for example, if somebody gets on stage and delivers a presentation or a session or a talk, odds are the vast majority of that talk has been copy pasted off of from the website or from a white paper or from a product brochure. And what I always say is you can tell when somebody is communicating with you from information that is not their own, because they're regurgitating. There's no real connection happening in that point. So what I'll frequently tell people, especially executives, because executives are very, very guilty of this, is I'll say, if your audience can read this information for themselves on their own time, in their own home, they have no need for you. There's no point in you being there and delivering that information to them. Just send them an email. Connect them to the website, point them to a URL, give them a QR code and let them go and read it on their own time and their own dime, and save them the hassle of sitting in front of you. But if you're going to command them to say, I would like for you now to set the rest of your world aside for a certain period of time and listen to me speak, then your goal, your objective, and frankly, your mandate is to speak to them from the heart and from the soul about what you care about most and why you believe that your story holds something unique and something special. That they can't read off of a computer screen or off of a piece of paper. They have to have you in front of them. So if you are the leader for your brand or you're a spokesperson for your organization in any capacity, it is your job to communicate from the heart, human to human, and make the copy-pasted content secondary to that primary human content.
That is good stuff. That is actually fantastic. And you, that's when you don't hear, and it's such great advice. And if people would just do that, take out all that dry data and just regurgitating data, and then what are you left with? If you just do that, if you take your talk that you had and you take away all of that, what are you left with? It's you on stage with nothing. So,
Yeah.
right, or some story that you
Which
can
is
relate.
terrifying, by the way, for most people.
Right. I actually had a dream where recently, which is funny, where I was on stage and I was supposed to be doing stand-up comedy when I had nothing prepared. Like, the audience was turning against me and I had no jokes. And yeah, terrifying. But yeah,
It's so hard.
it's so hard. But so it's funny because you talk about the kind of the passion and feeling it, right? And I think you make some really good points in the book about the difference between the enthusiasm, which I think people often mistake for passion. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So there are three pillars that you read about in the book that all good communication is founded on, and they are value, passion, and connection. So if we talk on the outsides of those, value is not about the value of a brand or the value of a product. It's about creating value for other people in an effort to get them to listen to you and to respond to what you're saying. The more they see the value in it for themselves, again, WIIFM factor, the more likely they are to hear what you have to say, to internalize it, interpolate it, figure out how it can make their lives better, and then take action on it. That's the value side. The connection side is what we've been talking about here. How do you create that human-to-human connection that makes people more likely to hear what you have to say and care about what you have to say in order to benefit themselves? So then in the middle, we have that passion part. Passion can be the hardest thing, and especially the larger the corporation or the longer that corporation has been around, the harder it is for them to maintain their passion, for very good reason. Most of the time, the bigger the brand and the more valuable the brand, the farther they are from the founding of that brand. Whoever came up with the initial idea that said, I see a gap in the marketplace, and I think we can create something amazing that's going to fill that gap and make people very happy. And they build up a brand, and they get equity in that brand. They find investors for that brand, and they find partnerships, and they move toward a launch, and then they launch their product, and maybe they go public with their product. And the longer they go and the more money they make, the farther and farther they get from that original passion concept of why they started it. So that's a lot of why I'm brought in with different companies to help these brands get back to their core passion. Not what do you sell, but why do you care enough to sell it? And if it's just about making money, your customer is going to see right through that. It is so clear and apparent when it's just profit driven. There's got to be a bigger reason. So I try to help brands get back to the passion that they feel for what they do, why they believe in it deeply, and want to invest their lives in not only creating it, but in sharing it with others in order to inspire the passion on the other side of the equation to get people to say, I want to be a part of that. And I'll give you a concrete example of how I try to make that happen. Let's go back to Cisco. Again, this brand that I've been working for years. Cisco is not number one in most areas. So if we just go security, there are a number of people who will say, okay, well, Cisco's been in the security game a long time and offers a lot of products. However, when it comes to one specific area, let's go with firewall, right? Whether you believe that firewall is current or firewall is past date or whatever it happens to be, a lot of people will say, Cisco has a firewall product, but there are these three other products that actually do a better job on firewall. So what I have to do is work with the folks at Cisco to say, okay, how do you stand up against that? Because if you just say, no, ours is better, nobody will listen to that story. They already believe the others are better. Here's a methodology of what you could say. And this just comes from something that we did some time ago. Where I said, all right, what if instead of saying that we are better, It's saying, yeah, those three companies are phenomenal. They do a great job. Here's the challenge, though. When you go to your leadership and say, I would like to change our investment and go with this security provider, they do one thing right now, and they do it very well. What happens in 5 years if that company has been purchased by another organization or is no longer in the marketplace? What do we do with our investment? Cisco's been around a long, long, long time. And while they may not be the best, you know what they are? Reliable, consistent, huge, responsive. We can take our security product and mold it to what you need over time based on our depth and breadth and core industry knowledge, which means we're an incredibly safe investment for you to bring to your leadership, and you don't have to worry that the company that you convince them to invest in might go belly up or might get sold off and become a non-entity a few years down the line. How about if we pursue that market? We make it easier for that particular IT leader to go back to their leadership and say, all right, Cisco may not be number one, but they're a pretty close number three, and they're incredibly reliable and incredibly responsive. How about if we take our investment in that direction? It's all about the mindset of the storytelling, because when you have to be number one, you've always got a target on your back. But if you can be reliable, responsive to your audience, always there for them, no fear, something goes wrong, we're going to help you correct it. And even better, if I'm on the Cisco side, and again, sorry to keep playing on them,
No, that's great.
but what I can say as Cisco is because we are a network provider, what we specialize in is allowing every application you utilize to communicate with and connect with and interoperate with every other application you purchase. So if you purchase from 15 different manufacturers, every one of them is going to be proprietary. When you work through Cisco, they all speak to one another, which gives you full stack observability depth. And now you can make sure that every app you have speaks to every other app you have and helps to build up your brand. Sound like a good plan? Good. Let's find the apps that are right for you.
I love it.
Yep.
I mean, there is the whole nobody's ever been fired for buying Cisco or for recommending Cisco. So was that
Absolutely.
yours? Did you come up with that?
No. I can't take even remote credit for that. Those are people who are far smarter and more and more
I don't
engaged.
know about that. You got this down pretty well. That's pretty good. So, all right, let's talk about you. You talked about digging deeper, and you hinted on it there earlier, and I'd like to dig deeper in that. So what do you mean by that? For those who aren't familiar, and then on top of that, how does one go about doing that? It's a great idea, but I think the implementing, let's say you're an executive, looking to dig deeper on their purpose, let's say, what's the exercise that you would go through with somebody to help them dig deeper? Maybe they can just have somebody do that to them.
Excellent. So let's go back to the book. You read this story in the book, and I'll quote one of the stories that I love to tell. I was working with a company that makes, among other things, surgical gloves, surgical latex gloves, and all the different other chemical compounds that go into these gloves. And it was very hard for me to work with their ELT on telling any story other than we build the best glove and we build it for the best price and you ought to buy our glove. That's where I was when I arrived within the organization. And so what we had to do is sit down and say, all right, here's the problem. There are a lot of gloves out there, and we know that most people are going to make their decisions based on price. Who is the most affordable? And you are not the most affordable. You just aren't. You're a bit more of a boutique organization. And even though you create a phenomenal product, for anybody who has to justify the bottom line back to their budget decision maker, whoever that stakeholder is, they're going to have to tell a better story. What story can we tell? So this is what I talk about in the book, is let's stop worrying about all of the technical aspects of our glove. Why are you in this business? Are you just in this business of selling gloves and other medical supplies in order to bring home a paycheck? Because if you are, you can't communicate on behalf of this brand. The customer is going to see straight through that. They know exactly why you're there. You're just trying to justify your solid income, and you're trying to prove value to your shareholders. And frankly, your customer could not care less about either of those things. What do they care about? As we know, they care about themselves. They care about their story. How can we change the story around gloves? And the way that I help this particular group rediscover their passion for why they do what they do is I said, what does a glove mean? And let's get personal. Take a step back from sales and think about, what does the right glove mean on the right hand? How does it affect you personally? And we started to do some brainstorming and some whiteboarding, and we ended up going round and round and round with 100 different ideas. And the top things we came away with is a glove can allow a parent in a neonatal intensive care unit to actually have physical contact with their own child. No glove or the wrong glove can kill the child. It can destroy the relationship. It can ruin lives. We talked about how a school nurse needs to have a reliable glove in order to treat the children in that elementary school and make sure that they're okay if one of them gets cut or one of them gets infected or one of them is ill, and we don't want that illness to spread throughout the school. We talked about how gloves can be used by cleanup crews at Disneyland. The people who go through at all hours picking up every piece of trash, some of which have sharp edges, some of which could be a Kleenex that was blown into by somebody who has the flu, who's walking around the park that day. The glove can make the difference of whether or not somebody can actually do their job and bring a paycheck home to feed their family and pay their mortgage and maybe take a vacation of their own to Disney at some point or somewhere else. And we had to get to the human side, the passion of why we make and why we sell gloves and medical equipment. Don't talk dollar signs. Let's talk about what this means to us personally. And what was fascinating through this 2-day process that we went through with this group of executives is they walked away so proud to be in this business of selling gloves, but helping them rediscover that passion and remind themselves how they ended up in these jobs in the first place. It was a very long trek, and we were able to watch it happen in real time together. And everybody walked away in a very different mindset than they started out in. That's what this can do. And anybody listening right now, if you're running your own brand, whether that's a one-person organization or a 100 or a 1,000-person organization, take that time to step back and remind yourself, why do I do what I do? And why am I doing it for the benefit of other people? And if you can figure that out, you will instantly start to change the way you create corporate storytelling around your brand.
I love that. It took me the longest time. So I'm an old Army guy. Not that old, but I was in the Army for 10 years when I was much younger. And the thing that I loved even as a kid growing up, playing with Army men, the thing that I loved about the idea was defending your country. For whatever reason, it struck me, it worked with me, and it just resonated. And I was like, yep, got to do that. So as soon as I could, I went off and did that. Loved it. I got to do some really cool stuff with the intel community and the airborne, and we had so much fun. Not every day's fun in the Army. Don't get me wrong. Most of them aren't, but I really enjoyed the mission and what we were, out to accomplish. When I got out and I started Cyberlinks, it took me the longest time to realize that the thing that I loved about Cyberlinks is I've extended that mission that I loved in the Army of defending the country, and now we're doing it now in the country. But we're all of these people are coming after U.S. businesses for ransomware and cyber attacks, and we're defending their way of life. I mean, we're literally defending their companies on a daily basis, keeping them safe from the bad guys who are out to destroy their company and take their money and their way of life. Fantastic. It took me forever to figure that out, like 10 years. And it just, and I was in a conversation with somebody, and it just dawned on me. I was like, oh shit, that's why. It's like, oh, dummy.
I love that. First of all, thank you for everything that you've done. And I'm glad that you shared that story as well, because I think it has huge value. And even everybody listening to you talk about it in that way. And I don't know how often you get to talk about it in your conversations, like the one that you and I are having now. Yeah. It is so important that people hear, because your passion comes shining through on that, Matthew. We hear it and we're like, well, yeah. Is he making $1? Sure. It's not entirely altruistic. Yeah. But the simple reality is, I think you would do it regardless of how many dollars you were making, because you believe in it deeply. And when you share that with others, you get them to say, man, that's a cool thing. I would love to be a part of that. And the more you can do that, the more likely you are to create good business for others, which ends up coming back to you tenfold. As I said at the beginning, this is a service business. Running a good company, a good brand, is about service. It's not about profits. Serve people and the profits will come. It's that whole concept of never chase $1. Do what you believe in deeply. Do what you are passionate about, and the dollar will chase you. It will happen.
I couldn't agree more. And you hear it, and it seems cliche. It's just but it really isn't. It's the right perspective and for the right reasons, and it drives every bit of the business. It gives people a reason to get up. It makes it for the glove people. Imagine how much better their daily life is getting up after digging deeper with you and realizing, man, gloves isn't just some boring, whatever plastic rubber thing. This is, where we're just trying to pinch every dime and nickel. This is fantastic. We're saving lives. We're giving people, making all that stuff happen. Didn't even realize. I mean, it's just fantastic. It's wonderful.
We get trained into always thinking money, 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 money. And I mean, some people can do it. If you're a product aggregator who is selling this week's piece of garbage on Facebook or whatever it is that you happen to do, and your whole idea is go to a warehouse, buy up the 10,000 remaining units that never sold, turn them around for a micro profit, pound, 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 pound. As soon as they're all gone, move on to the next product, move on to the next product. There are aggregators who do that. There are tons of them in China who do this. And the fact is, it's a good business. Are any of those people really passionate about what they do? Probably not. They're just in it for a quick buck. But that's a very, very tiny fraction of organizations. You can have success just chasing the dollar. It's not that it's impossible, but it's unlikely. It also is unlikely to sustain. So if you think about a startup brand, right? Startup may be one person, two people, three people, four people. The story is entirely on you. You've got this idea, you're trying to build something. You are trying to find equity for that particular startup, which means you've got to go out and convince people why this is a great thing for them to invest their time, their energy, and their money in. And at the beginning, it's hard work, but it's easy to do because you have that passion. You deeply believe in it. And then what happens? Let's say you're successful. Now, all of a sudden, you launch the product, and maybe you even have a public launch as opposed to just a family launch, and you sell an IPO. And now you're out there in the market, and a couple of years go by, and a few more years go by, and you're doing really, really well. Well, now you've been trained to follow the dollars, but the passion is so far removed, the passion of why you started this thing. And the longer the company goes, the more likely it's no longer being run by the people with the initial passion. At the same time, let's go on the negative side of it. Let's say that you've got the same startup and you're incredibly passionate about it and it doesn't fly. You can't get those investors in private equity, and people aren't buying it for one reason or another. There is gold in that as well. That's very, very positive, because anybody in an entrepreneurial spirit, they tend to think in terms of failure. And what I always say is, no, it's not that it failed. It's for whatever reason, it either wasn't the product at the right time for the right market, or the story behind that product wasn't enough to bring people on board. So what do? You set that passion aside and you follow the next passion, or you scrap that one and you rebuild based on the initial passion that kicked you off in the first place, and you tell a better story around that passion in order to inspire passion in other people. Eventually, the success is going to find you, and when it does, so will the dollars.
Love it. So there was one thing. I tend not to have the kind of canned questions, but I did have this one point in here that I saw that I really loved. You taught, and I think again because so many of the things people hear, but it doesn't they come off as cliche, so they don't really get into it. You do a great job in the book of making all of these things that I think people hear and think are cliche and making them real and helping them to understand and actually implement them. So in the book, you talk about a great talk paints a picture. So, and I think people hear that a lot. What is your advice on how does a regular person who is maybe, not so artistic, if we're going to use that painting analogy, how do you turn a regular person into a decent, if not great painter?
Ooh, love that. That's a great question, Matthew. So the story that I tell in the book is about my friend Michael, who's a real estate broker here in Chicago, where I live. And I'll take a step back. What Matthew is talking about here is the idea that a great sale or a great marketing pitch comes in the form of looking at your audience. Again, whether that's an audience of 1 or an audience of 500, it doesn't matter. But it's the idea of, let me paint a picture of what your success could look like. And let me paint you right into the middle of it. You are the star of the picture, not me, not my product, not my company, you. You are the star of the picture. This is what Apple does so brilliantly. A number of companies, Nike, McDonald's, Budweiser, they all do it beautifully. But if we take Apple as an example, you will drive by a billboard, and the billboard is a beautiful photo. And underneath it, it doesn't say the qualities of the camera, the phone that it was shot on. Doesn't tell you how many megapixels are there or what kind of power that it takes. You know what it says underneath? This photo taken by, and then whoever is underneath it, right? So this photo is taken by Matthew Connor using the iPhone. I make Matthew Connor the star of my Apple story. And what it's saying is, imagine this world where everything is not only accessible to you, but you hold the power in your hands to connect with anyone, anywhere, at any time on a universal platform that has no proprietary aspects, that makes your life single button easy, touch, done, and that interoperates with every other application in your life. Doesn't that sound like a cool place to live? Well, guess what? If you'd like to live there, go ahead and get one of these. Pick one of these things up, and you can live in that beautiful world. That is Apple painting a picture of success for all of us. You mentioned the 1984 ad. That's exactly what they did.
Yep.
The power that used to only be in the hands of the massive corporations, we have now allowed that power to be in your hands. You get to do what they used to do, and you get to do it in a small, compact form that's affordable, accessible to you, and gives you all the power you've ever dreamed of in your life. Doesn't that sound cool? Yeah, go get this product and make it happen. So then if we go to one that I use in the book, my friend Michael, going back to him as a real estate broker, he learned long ago that the best way to sell a home to his clients was not to talk about the details and aspects of the home, the square footage, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what year it was built, the quality of the windows, the quality of the construction. He realized none of that mattered because every real estate broker was going to pitch that about the home that they were representing. Instead, he knows how to walk people in the door and help them start to imagine themselves living in that home. Wouldn't it be so cool if your kids could actually do their homework up there in that picture window out there in the front? When your friends come over, you see that space over there by the pool? You can sort of picture what it'd be like. Super Bowl parties, hanging out there Friday night after work, everybody comes together and has some wine and cheese. This bedroom right over here, what's really unique about this, I've always thought is, what if I've seen your home? What if you do this over here and this over here? And all of a sudden the client starts to say, ooh, I would love to see my stuff in this space. Oh, that picture that we have, that really bright one, that would look so good by that fireplace over there. And oh, my kids would love this area of the home. Now the quality of the home, the construction of the home, the details of the home become less important compared to the emotion of the client saying, I see myself and my stuff in this space. And that's how you generate an offer on that particular property. That's what we mean by painting a beautiful picture and painting your customer or your client or whoever you're speaking with as the star of that picture and inviting them to live in it.
Love it. Now, we didn't discuss this. I don't know this, one way or the other, but as I read through the book and I think, all these business, and clearly you do it for Cisco. Do you offer services like this for smaller businesses where you can come in and be like, hey, look, let's just go over what are you stuck on, maybe digging deeper, things like that, or finding their passion and then digging deeper on that. And, is that something that you do with small businesses, or is it purely big business and the book?
Oh, Matthew, no, the smaller the business, the more fun. Because a lot of times I don't get access. The larger the company, the less access I have to its executive leadership, right? It's only I'm frequently hired by the new CMO. That's one of the first clients that I'll get. They arrive at the organization based on a massive and successful history. And they arrive at the company and they say, we are telling the wrong story to our marketplace, or man, we have gotten so stagnant. We're not exciting or engaging people anymore. We need some help and some support in helping to tell a better story, and they'll bring me in. And that's great. But I usually don't have then direct access to the CEO or to the head of the sales department. I have to beg for that. When I go in with a small group, I get direct access to everybody. Now we can all sit in the room together. We can story tell together. And this is everybody from the person who founded the whole concept to the latest hire. And we can all work in the room together on the corporate storytelling for that particular brand to come up with something that is successful, not only from the top of the mountain, but from the person who has just started to climb that mountain. And the more perspectives we get, the more insight we get into what story we think will work for the marketplace, the more likely we are to, as a group, land on a very successful story. I love working for startups, for small companies. I think my favorites overall are companies that are less than 50 people. I just adore that because I can literally say, when can we get everybody in the room together? When can we get a room full of 30 people and let's spitball together for a few hours? And then I can break off and work with the individual units within that organization to make sure that they are hitting their core targets and doing what they need to do. But first, we can have a group conversation. So yeah, small is brilliant. It's like Congress, right? It's that old idea, Congress doesn't move quickly. 535 people to convince, really challenging. Put me in a room full of 3 or 4 people, boy, we can get things done rapidly.
Yeah. I mean, imagine, going back to the glove story. I don't know how big that company was, but it's one thing if you meet at the top of Mount, Olympus with the gods of the company, and the 6 people in the room are like, yes, they're all very passionate now, but then getting it down to the, let's say 1,000 other people there, the people making the gloves, maybe not so inspired. But if everybody in the company was there, and now the people making the glove, or at least the managers there on the floor are all now deeply passionate about gloves because they weren't before that. That's impactful. That's super cool.
It is. Oh, and Matthew, you bring up such a good point there, and a very important point. I'm glad that you brought us to this. When we talk about great corporate storytelling, we always think of it in an external process. I, as a brand, speaking to the marketplace, to my clients. Right. But great corporate storytelling is internal as much as it is external. First of all, it's individually personal. The better a corporate story I can tell to myself about why I do what I do, why I believe in it, why I'm passionate about it, and why I want to bring other people along for that passion, the more likely I am to become a more successful storyteller for my brand externally. Same thing with working within the teams. So as you just said, if we can create a better corporate story together for a brand, something that is more inspiring, something that's more motivating, something that is more sustaining, and that's more succinct, successful, and consistent across the company, then the easier it is for leadership within that organization, all the way from the ELT down to an individual team leader, to go to the rest of the team and say, let's readdress what it is that we're trying to do and why we are trying to do it. And you will likely have much more success inspiring your team all the way down to the person working on the factory line, creating or boxing up that glove, to tell them a story that makes them more connected to the brand message, to their own job, to the reason that they are doing what they are doing, which then makes them more successful, makes them happier in their position. It runs all the way up to the line long before we ever send it out to the client.
I love it. Well, on that note, where can people find out more about you, and where can they, if they decide, well, hopefully everybody should get a copy of your book and read it, because I think it is profoundly excellent and people will benefit greatly from it. And then where can they find out about engaging your services?
Oh, so appreciated. Yeah, if you want to grab the book, available in all formats, hardcover, softcover, audiobook, read by me, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I wasn't going to do it myself, but somebody convinced me to, hopefully for, right or wrong, whichever it happened to be, or ebook as well. And you can find it at all the regular resources. If you want to reach out to me, and if there's any way that I can support you, help you, guide you, or just applaud you and be your cheerleader, I'm easy to find. The name of the company is Steve Multer Corporate Storytelling. You can get there at stevemulter.com or corporatestorytelling.com. Both are going to guide back. And last thing I'll mention is I've got a freebie for anybody in your listenership who is interested in doing this. I have created a free downloadable PDF e-guide. It's called 5 Paths to Passionate Storytelling. And no matter who you are, what your job title is, your socioeconomic status, your education status, the amount of speaking that you've done, whatever it says on your business card, doesn't matter. Anybody can apply any of these 5 tips and tricks to instantly start up-leveling the quality of your communication. So if you want to pick up that 5 Paths to Passionate Storytelling e-guide, very simple. You're going to go to the website, corporatestorytelling.com/guide. Just remember to add /guide at the end. And then there's a code. The code that you're going to put in is sold, told, 23, all lowercase, all one word, sold told 23. And then you can download that e-guide, and you can also subscribe to my Tuesday outreach. I do a Tuesday tips and tricks about better methodologies and aspects of corporate storytelling. You can be a part of that as well if you'd like.
Fantastic. Well, we will put a link to that and the details below, down there, wherever that is. So whether it's YouTube or on our site, but down there, whatever, wherever that goes. I don't know. Weird stuff. I don't know. I don't know how this works. What do I know? No, I'm just kidding. I know how it works. Anyways, we'll put a link to it. Thank you for coming on. I know I will be signing up for that and checking that out. And I think we will be engaging you. I think this is really great. So in any event, thanks, Stephen, for coming on. This has been great. Thanks.
Matthew, such a privilege. Thanks so much to you for sharing your excellent platform with me and allowing me to tell my story. And thanks to all of your listeners as well for paying attention and being a part of it. Just a gift.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.